Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Women's Soccer Show. I'm Sara.
And I'm Allie.
Another week of women's football is upon us, and we have another week of many a topics. I'm excited for this, Allie. Well, I love the episodes where we get into a topic and we really dig our heels in. I also love the episodes where I look at our notes and I'm like, we've got a fair few topics to cover here, and we get to spend, a little bit of time on each one, which is what we've got for everybody today. Would you like to tell the listeners what we're getting into?
We are getting into all sorts of the football drama. So we're going to start off with Champions League. We previewed it last week. The matchups are official. And if you're a Man City fan, cover your ears now because it is not good news for you.
Listen, I'm going to hold off on saying why, but it just tickles me right to my core. I find it so funny what ended up happening.
We're then going to get into the seriousness of it all because there was an incident this weekend involving Mapi León. There's been some statements coming out about, so we're going to get into the what happened, the why happened, and what they're saying about it. This will lead us on to what is happening with Bunny Shaw, who did make a great comeback this weekend in the FA Cup. But there was a lot going on with her, including that she chose to miss the Subway Cup semi-final. So we're going to get into all of that good stuff. And then we've got some bits about the Subway Cup because there's so much going on with that. We've now got our two finalists. And so we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of that. And then finally, there is some NWSL stuff. We're going to talk about the influx of US stars coming over to Europe and Canada, as well as the lack of the college draft. What does this mean for the NWSL? Should fans start to panic?
Ooh, that's a good lineup we have there. Shall we do it?
Let's get into it. So, let's get into the Champions League of it all. The draw happened last Friday, and we have got the matchups. We now know who's going to face off in the quarterfinals and then the semi-finals. Quick reminder, we had the groups that they were split off, and it was a runner-up had to face a group winner. You were never going to get two runners-up facing off. You were never going to get two winners facing off. You also couldn't face the winner or the runner-up of your group, which meant that we got some tasty results for how this is all going to play out.
It's a good one. So Lyon, Chelsea, Arsenal, and Barcelona were the winners of the groups, and Wolfsburg, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, and Manchester City were the runners-up. Okay, here's how it unfolded. Real Madrid and Arsenal will play each other. Bayern Munich and Lyon will play each other. Wolfsburg and Barcelona will play each other, a rematch of the 2023 finals. I think I have that year correct. And Manchester City and Chelsea will play each other. And the reason these results tickle me to my core is because of the Manchester City-Chelsea draw. Because this means that Manchester City and Chelsea will play each other 4 times over the course of the last 2 weeks in March. 4 times in 2 weeks, everybody. They will face each other on March 15th for the Women's League Cup. That'll be at a neutral ground, iPro Stadium. They will then face each other 4 days later on March 19th for leg 1 of the Champions League quarterfinals. City will host that. And then just 5 days after that, on March 23rd, they will play in their second WSL League matchup. City will host that one as well. And then finally, just 4 days after that, on March 27th, leg 2 of the Champions League quarterfinals, Chelsea will host that. I mean, it's objectively funny, Allie. When we were texting, you seemed more annoyed about it and you thought it was kind of BS. And I just think this is absolutely hilarious.
I do think it's BS. It's also hilarious that it's also going to be 4 different grounds because the Champions League first leg will be played at the Manchester City Women's Stadium, which is the Joey Stadium. And then the league match is going to be played at the main stadium, which is the Etihad. So they will be playing each other on 4 different pitches in 2 different weeks.
I do have a question about the neutral stadium, the iPro Stadium.
Yes.
Is it closer to one or the other, or will it seem pretty neutral?
It's technically closer to Manchester.
Okay.
Because it's in one of your favourite places to pronounce, Derby. It's also known as Pride Park for the UK listeners that got very confused when Sarah called it by its corporate name.
Oh, sorry.
So it is technically nearer to Manchester, but it's still going to be crazy. Like 4 different stadiums, 2 weeks playing the same team.
It is objectively hilarious. I don't know how else to say this. For the cards to align like this, it's tasty.
Also, just a quick sideline on that, we haven't had the FA Cup draw yet. Both Manchester City and Chelsea are still in the FA Cup. We could see them play each other for a 5th time in 3 weeks.
I just kind of want it to happen because it's ridiculous. Okay, my big question around, because we'll get into the other matchups, but we have to stay on this City-Chelsea matchup really quickly. They've already played each other once in the league. This game that's scheduled in March will be the second and last time they play each other in the WSL. When they played each other earlier on this season in the WSL, Chelsea won 2-0. That was at Chelsea. 4 games over the course of 2 weeks. Who do you think that benefits? Like, is it to City's detriment or is it to Chelsea's detriment?
I definitely think the way things are going, it's going to be to City's detriment. I know my Man City fan friends are more upset and annoyed at this draw than my Chelsea fan friends are. The only thing I will say going for it is that Chelsea are technically at home, but they're not, because the Champions League leg will be played at Stamford Bridge, which is the main stadium. So they won't have the Kingsmeadow power that Kingsmeadow is, which is what they had in the league, because anybody who's been to Kingsmeadow will know what a fortress that is, and it is such a tough ground to go to as an opposition. They won't have that because it's going to be at Stamford Bridge, which is a whole different ball game. But at the same time, we've talked about it before, the depth that Chelsea have, they could literally put out a different team each game and probably still come away the victor. I don't think Man City have that depth.
I completely agree. When you play somebody this many times, it favors... Well, just purely when you play this many games, it favors the team with more depth, and then the more different looks you can give as a team, strategically, tactically, personnel-wise, the more I think it is in your favor as well. Because at this level, if you're just going to do the same thing every time, you're going to lose after the first game because the other team's going to figure out how to break you down. And I think Chelsea are kind of more malleable, more adaptable for many reasons than City. I definitely think it favors Chelsea. I think Chelsea were obviously already going to be the favorites in Champions League, but now I think it's made them the favorites in these other 2 matchups as well.
Wait. Let's go back onto that statement. You think Chelsea are the favourites in Champions League?
In this matchup.
Oh, I was going to say.
Sorry, no.
I was going to say, let's clarify.
But what a great lead on, Allie. When you look at these matchups, I guess, who does look like the favorite to you? And which matchup do you think will be the tightest or closest of these 4?
I have to say, if you're an Arsenal fan, you must be praying to whatever deity you believe in, because you avoid the big favourites until the final.
Yeah.
Because
let's rip through how it's laid out, because it's laid out in a tournament style structure.
Yeah, so the way it works is the winners out of Real and Arsenal will take on whoever wins out of Bayern and Lyon, and then whoever wins out of Wolfsburg versus Barcelona will take on whoever wins out of Manchester City and Chelsea. So the thing is, if you're Arsenal, right, you have a good shot of beating Real Madrid. You are probably on an equal paring with Real. You've played Bayern, and so you would hope maybe that they would beat Lyon. You've not played a Lyon as such.
Well, let's just be real though. What you want is to not be on Barcelona's side, and probably not on Chelsea's side, honestly. Yeah, but you don't want to be on Barcelona's side, and Chelsea must be so upset right now because once again the road goes through Barcelona.
Yeah, exactly. Also, Arsenal being grateful that they won't take on Wolfsburg if they do beat Barcelona, because that's who knocked them out last time round. So honestly, if you're an Arsenal fan, you must be, like I said, praying to whatever deity you believe in, because you have got, no road is easy, but you've got the easier, in air quotes, road to the final out of the English teams that are left, compared to your Manchester City Chelsea.
Absolutely. So who is the favorite for you?
I still think it's Barcelona.
It's hard to pick against them right now.
It really is hard to pick against them right now. I do think it's Barcelona. Again, it's a team that's got depth. I do think that the semi-final against Chelsea is going to be tasty.
You're just already calling the semi-final against Chelsea.
I'm calling it against Chelsea. I'm sorry, Man City fans. Don't hate me.
I agree. I already have that circled as well, where I'm just like, I'm almost sad that it's the semifinal. I would really have loved for that to be the final, because can you imagine how upset you're going to be in particular if it's Barcelona-León in the final again?
I'm going to be so mad. Don't do this to me.
There's a chance. I mean, there's a chance at anything, but we could see Chelsea-Arsenal. I don't know. I mean, I would love to see a Barcelona-Wolfsburg rematch. There's a lot of good options here. Not a lot of them include León in the final, not to be a hater, but it's the reality of it. All right, so Barcelona, your favorite. When you look at these matchups, though, which one do you think will be the closest in terms of these quarterfinals? There's Real Madrid, Arsenal, Bayern, León, Wolfsburg, Barcelona, and City, Chelsea.
I would probably say it's probably Real, Arsenal are probably the closest. I feel like they're the closest in terms of how they do in the league. I feel like it's like they're the closest in terms of squad depth and players on each squad. I would tip it slightly in Arsenal's favour, but I would say that those are probably the closest for me out of the matchups.
I would agree with that, and I would agree with what you're saying. I'd tip it slightly in Arsenal's favor. However, I also have Bayern Munich Lyon circled as something that could be a pretty close one. I feel like we're disparaging Wolfsburg in this, though. Like, I think the thing with Wolfsburg is that I feel like they're the greatest of great one year, and then they just drop so quickly the following year, and sometimes you don't know what you're going to get from them in the Champions League. Like, they could show up against Barcelona. They almost beat them in the final. Let's remind everybody, not just 2 years ago.
No, they could. 100% they could. But I'm looking at this season. They had such a slow start in the league. They were, tottering up around 6th and 7th for so long, and they've managed to pull themselves back up to 3rd, but barely. So for me, I don't think it's been a great season for Wolfsburg. And when you look at what Barcelona's been bringing,
yeah, that's true.
It's not my go-to. And also remember, as we mentioned last week, the runner-up gets home advantage first, which we decided is not an advantage, because if you're Wolfsburg and you're going to Barcelona, potentially already down on aggregate, mentally that is a really huge hill that you have to climb to get over there. So unfortunately, Wolfsburg fans, don't at me, but I have the least faith in all of the teams that are left.
So basically what we're saying is that one side of the bracket in the Wolfsburg, Barcelona, City, Chelsea, we already essentially have decided that Barcelona and Chelsea are going to come out and play in the semifinal. But the other side of the bracket, Real Madrid, Arsenal, Bayern Munich, and Lyon is pretty much a toss-up.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair.
All right, so let's do it. Why not? It's the quarterfinals. Why not put our money where our mouth is? Let's make some predictions, Allie. And I'm going to tell everybody, neither of us did this ahead of time, so we are just going to fly by the seat of our pants, which is sometimes good for predictions and sometimes a disaster. But either way, fun. So let's do it. Matchup number 1, Real Madrid versus Arsenal. Who advances?
I say Arsenal, but it's going to be super close. I think it's not going to be a high-scoring game. You're looking at probably a couple of maybe 1-0s over each leg.
I think it'll be more high-scoring than that, but I think Arsenal will edge it out. Matchup number 2, Bayern Munich versus Lyon.
I'm going to give it to the Germans. I'm going to give it to Bayern.
Is that your head or is that your heart?
I think it's probably my heart, because I don't want to see another Lyon-Barcelona final. But I also do think that I've watched more of the Bundesliga than I have the French league. And I just think there is something about Bayern this year. They've got, Pernille Harder and Magda Eriksson back. There's a really strong team. They obviously are missing now Georgia Stanway. But yeah, For my sanity, I'm giving it to Bayern.
I really wanted you to pick Lyon because I didn't want us to agree on everything. Because I also think it'll be Bayern.
Shock horror.
But for the sake of it, for the sake of it, I might say Lyon. Okay, I think it's Bayern, but let me make the case that it would be Lyon. First of all, I do think that these teams are very evenly matched in terms of talent. I do think the leagues are all very similar. I think the German league is more competitive, top to bottom, but not by too much than the French league. So it's a nice, easy comparison. And I think in a situation like this, experience is something that you have to include. You have to take that into consideration when you're thinking about a team that knows so well not just how to play in a tournament like this, but they know how to win in a tournament like this. And tournament style play is very different than league play, and they have proven time and time and time again that they are dominant in this type of tournament. You know what? I've talked myself into it. It's Lyon. It's gonna be Lyon.
I love when you do that.
That's
You'll
it.
just sit and talk and then be like, yeah, no, do you know what? I've convinced myself.
You know what? I'm convincing. All right, let's just do the other side of the bracket very quickly because I think we both agree. Matchup number 3, Wolfsburg and Barcelona.
Barcelona!
I would agree. And matchup number 4, City and Chelsea.
I think City will give it a good old go, but I do think it's going to go to Chelsea.
I think it'll go Chelsea as well. Okay. I think our semifinal predictions are going to be a little bit more fun. I think we're going to have a lot more to say about it, but that was fun. Okay, a reminder, those games will be played. First leg of the quarterfinals will be March 18th and 19th. I know that sounds like it's far away, but it's not. It's coming up quickly. You can watch it for free on DAZN Football. Moving on from a topic that we got to have a lot of fun talking about to one that will be a lot less fun, but is very, very important and very necessary. And I think we'll say right now, I think trigger warning for, I'm going to say both racial and sexual abuse. Yep. Fast forward until you hear us doing Around the World, if you would like to skip over this. So with that being said, let's get into it. We have 2 topics to cover here. One pertains to Mapi León and one pertains to Bunny Shaw and the WSL's response to Bunny Shaw enduring a lot of abuse this past, or I guess 2 weekends ago. We're going to start with Mapi León because it just happened. So for those who don't know what this is about, Allie, can you give a bit of background on what happened? Well, not just background. Can you tell us the story?
The story. So basically, what has happened is there's some footage emerged from Barcelona's game this weekend of Mapi León going up against Daniela Caracas. And it looks at first, it's a bit, sort of very, defender versus attacker type, normal jostling that you see all the time. Until you see Mapi León's hand go very low, like as if it's going to grab Caracas' crotch. And then the reported Spanish is she turned around and said to Caracas, so you, and please excuse my French, so you have a dick, no?
The video is really upsetting to watch because it's really, there's no question what happened. That's exactly what happened. Which I guess leads us on to Mapi León released a statement essentially saying hey, that's not what happened. You're all making something out of nothing and stop damaging my reputation.
Yeah, you can read the statement if you really want, but it's such a lawyer statement that I don't recommend it because it genuinely was saying, no, that's not what happened. I touched her leg. You watch the video, she does not touch her leg. And that I was asking her what she was doing and that I will sue anybody that tries to make it out of something that it's not.
Yeah, I'm going to quote this one line because it was really disappointing. Quote, I condemn obviously this is translated from Spanish to English, but quote, I condemn the harassment that Daniela is apparently suffering on social media, which has nothing to do with me, and I show her my sincere support. To go as far as to say it has nothing to do with her, even if she had actually just kind of accidentally grazed the outside of her leg, it still has something to do with you. And to fully take yourself out of the equation is somehow even more upsetting and disappointing.
Yeah, and I think the biggest statement for me that came out was Espanyol, which is the opposition that Barcelona were playing. They came out with a statement and they said that Daniela didn't feel like she could retaliate at the time because she knew she would be the one that would receive disciplinary action, which, how many times have we talked about this on this podcast, where you see players of colour being victimised and penalised by officials for doing things that their white counterparts do all the time and barely get a warning for. So she knew that she would, so she didn't, and has taken the time and go, do you know what, actually I'm not okay with what happened on Sunday and I feel like I need to talk about it. Which is even more disappointing with what León has come out and said, because she's like, oh, it's nothing to do with me, but it's like, but it so is.
I hope that Daniela Caracas does use the full weight of all of the legal resources that are there for her. I hope she does, because she deserves to, because that it is quite literally sexual assault what we saw on that video. And for Mapi León to also come out and basically say, like, do not believe her. Why would she be making this up? It's Mapi León's statement also kind of makes it seem like the internet has made this into something, when actually, like, Daniela Caracas came out and said this is what happened and it made me feel really uncomfortable, and then the internet made it into something. And it's incredibly ironic that it's Mapi León, who we've talked about also in the context of the Spanish national team, and that entire team that suffered and endured so much abuse underneath their coaches. Obviously, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of layers here. I'm not trying to let Mape off the hook by saying this, but like, hurt people, and the cycle continues, unfortunately. But I think the deeper, obvious, maybe not deeper, but the other issue within this is the racial side of it, which is the biggest and most pertinent of them. And I loved what you put out on social media for us, Allie, and I thought maybe you could just read that, because I think it really encapsulates everything.
I shall indeed. I was inspired when I wrote this, because I felt because we had to comment. So basically, I have said is Mapi León's actions against Daniela Caracas are vile. They are clearly race coded as well as transphobic and should not stand. Time and time again, we see black athletes ridiculed or abused for what is considered masculine traits. The time to stop this is now, and this is what I mean by racial coded, because I want to make this really clear that Mapi León saying, you have a dick, no. How many times have we seen players of colour be accused of being men, for having XY chromosomes, for having accelerated testosterone? We saw it with Barbara Banda, we saw it with Hawa Sissoko, we've seen it with Lauren James, we are seeing it, and we'll get onto it when we talk about Bunny Shaw and the abuse that she got over the last couple of weekends. We see it time and time again, and it is only aimed at players of colour. Ever. This level of like transvestigation that I'm using in air quotes. So it is race coded. It's 100% race coded, because Mapi León would not go up to another player that's white and go try and grab their crotch and go, you have a dick, no?
Yep. I mean, I wouldn't just say race coded. I would just say it's racist. Plain and simple. Period. The end. It's not even coded. It's completely outright racist. Period. The end. Like, I'm going to be very curious to see if anything happens from the league. I would really like to see some form of punishment from the league that's completely outside of the legality situation, because I really do think that, like, legally, I don't know how the courts work in Spain, but I do think that legally Daniela Caracas has a case to take, to court. And that is separate from punishment that the league can hand down to Mapi León, which I absolutely think she should be suspended. At the very least.
At the very least.
At the very least. All right, moving it along, let's talk, because we had a blast, just an utter blast, talking about the game that was City versus Arsenal. And the game was a tasty little treat. And unfortunately, afterwards, we learned that on the field, apparently Bunny Shaw and Millie Bright, according to statements released from the WSL, endured abuse, sounds like during the game and after. And I asked you this, Allie, I was like, was it from visiting fans? Was it from Arsenal fans? Or was it from both? And you said you think it was from both sides, from both home City fans and visiting Arsenal fans.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I just want to make a clarification on the Millie Bright thing. Millie Bright was the one who came out and put out on her social media saying that she was doing autographs. They do the rounds at Chelsea, and she was doing autographs, and she heard somebody say, well, Millie Bright was, I'll say rubbish to keep it PG, but that's not the word. That's not the word they said. Yeah, rhymes with hit. And then proceeded to ask Millie Bright for a photo and autograph. And so she was like,
as much as that sucks to hear, I wouldn't quite call that abuse.
No, this is what I want to clarify, because Millie Bright came out and just said, hey, we are not collectibles. Like, if I can hear that, don't then come up to me and ask for a photo and an autograph. Yeah. The problem I have is the thing is that then some more serious stuff came out about Bunny Shaw, and that she was getting, again, we go back to the same thing. She was getting racist and sexist comments in the fact they were calling her a man, and that she was
Who are these people? Like, who are these people who are paying to go to these WSL games and then doing this?
Yeah.
Who are these people? Show your faces. Stop hiding.
Exactly.
I want you to send me a note. Tell me who you are, because I want to know. I want to know.
Exactly.
What are you doing and why?
Exactly. So it's the racism of it all, in the fact that they are, again, transvestigating black players because they don't feel they are feminine enough. And I'm doing all of this in air quotes. The reason we mentioned the Millie Bright thing, and we will get on to the Bunny Shaw because that's the more important part, is the WSL then did a statement that brought them both together as if they both had equal weight, being like, hey, we won't stand for any abuse, which is like, that's great. They are not the same thing, the WSL. They are not the same thing. Criticising Millie Bright's performance, how inarticulately, is not the same as people calling Bunny Shaw the N-word, calling her a man, going through all of the racist thing. And they go, and she's not shared, she said she won't share them because she doesn't want to give it energy, but they're sliding into her DMs on her social media.
I mean, the sad thing is this is not a surprise. I think that any black woman in this space, player or not, unfortunately, endorse that. Which, I mean, it's beyond saddening. I did find this. I am gonna read this quickly because this was the Barclays WSL statement. We are shocked and saddened to hear about the incidents that occurred over the weekend relating to Khadijah Bunny Shaw and Millie Bright. Players, coaches, and officials should be able to do their job without being subject to abuse, either in person or online, and there's no place for it within the women's football or wider society. We are speaking to both clubs and offering any support they might need. Could this be any more generic?
That's the problem. They won't say the R word. They won't say racism. And we're seeing it again because, and the thing that saddened me more than anything is there are two players that have talked about this publicly, and I'm not talking about Millie Bright's statement. Two players, Viv Miedema and Lottie Rubenmoy. Lottie is the only one out of the two that said the R word. She's the only one that's come out and said, this was pure racism and we will not stand for it. Viv sort of sugarcoated it and was like, after a tough game, I was trying to rally with my teammates, and unfortunately some bad things happened and abuse happened, but she wouldn't say the R word. Lottie is the only player to come out and say, this is racism against Bunny Shaw and we need to stamp this out now. It's so disappointing. And then unfortunately the bigger consequence of that is that Bunny Shaw took herself out of the Subway Cup semi-final against Arsenal for mental health reasons. She didn't want to go back there. I don't blame her one iota.
I don't blame her one bit.
But the fact it's affecting her career, because she should have been playing in a semi-final to go win silverware and just couldn't do that because of idiots that are making her life hell.
I don't want to turn this into like a lecture, and I'm not like about to lecture everybody listening. So maybe I shouldn't lead with that. But like, I guess this just leads me to say, obviously us saying this, sharing what happened, saying that like this is very much not okay. This is pure racism. This is how it affects everybody and players, etc. It's important. But I also think if you're in the stadium and you hear it, maybe we can talk about, we always talk about how to make women's soccer continue to be a safe space for people. And it's quite obviously not a safe space for a lot of black players and probably a lot of black fans and people of color as well because of that. So how can we quite literally do that? I feel like I encountered this in Australia, and I won't say the incident because, again, for the same reason as Bunny Shaw, I think it's useless to give it air. But there was this white man that was saying a lot of racist stuff while we were watching the Australia-France game. And Wendy Renard was on the screen. He kept saying a lot of racist stuff. And me and a couple friends just started talking to him and telling him that that was not okay and making sure he shut the F up. And we could do that because we're white women and there were a lot of us. And we were just like, okay, this is not okay. If you're in the stadium and you hear that, please, dear Lord, do something about it. If you don't feel comfortable doing something about it, go get security and tell them that that person needs to be removed for whatever reason. Like, but dear Lord, do something about it. Like, because what also angers me is the idea that this stuff was being said and everybody in the stands was just kind of like standing there doing nothing.
That's the thing. And like, we should start taking the approach from the men's game, which is let's start issuing bans, man. Like, you get your season ticket revoked. You are not allowed within certain stadiums for so many years. We need to start, criminalizing this because it is illegal. Racism is illegal. I think people are forgetting this. It is a crime to do this. Let's start punishing them.
I really think when it comes to the question of like continuing the safe space, it really is the impetus is on the fans who have been there, who want it to continue to be a safe space or want it to start to be a safe space, whichever way you see it. The impetus is on the fans. Like, that's how it's going to start. So while I'm disappointed in obviously everybody who was a part of the situation, I'm also pretty disappointed if you were in the stadium and you did nothing and said nothing, because that's just as bad. Let's go around the world. Around the world, around the world.
To Scotland, and it's all to play for in the SPWL, as all three of the top teams scored 8+ goals this weekend. Glasgow City remain on top with 50 points, closely followed by Celtic, who are also on 50, but with less of a goal difference. Rangers round out the top three with 48. Who will take the title is anyone's guess.
To Germany, a draw for Wolfsburg has relegated them to third place. Strong wins for Eintracht Frankfurt and Bayern Munich has kept them neck and neck in first and second respectively. At the other end of the table, it looks like Turbine Potsdam are all but relegated.
To France, and Lyon remain 7 points clear at the top of the league with their win this weekend. PSG and Paris FC keep jostling for second and third. It does appear with the gap between the top three and the rest of the league, we have our Champions League contenders for next season.
And finally to Spain. It looks like last week was a blip for Barcelona, who are back to their winning ways this past weekend. Real and Atletico Madrid also won this weekend to strengthen their Champions League chances. However, Athletic Club's win this weekend is putting pressure on the third place spot. On to the Subway Cup. That's right, the Subway Cup. And if you haven't heard about it, it's because it used to be called the Conti Cup. So we're going to talk all about the Subway Cup, why it changed, for our U.S. listeners, how is it different from the FA Cup? And then also the ever important question, should Champions League teams be in this competition? So let's start first and foremost. The Subway Cup is the new name. It was previously, prior to this year, known as the Conti Cup. Allie, I'm not saying that I think the Conti Cup was a great name, but why change it to the Subway Cup? And yes, for those of you listening, it is sponsored by Subway, the sandwich shop. It is literally the sandwich shop Subway. And not like New Yorkers, how you're thinking like a Subway series. It is Subway, the sandwich shop.
See, Sarah, you've answered your own question. It is sponsorship because it used to be sponsored by Continental Tires. And in fact, they used to have a great trophy that looked like a tire. It was fantastic. But that has ended, and Subway have now taken over this. Its official title is the Women's League Cup, to match with the men's team, but we call it by its sponsorship. So like the men's is sponsored by an energy drink. But the problem is the fact that the Conti Cup used to be like, roll off the tongue. It was something that you want to say. You can't shorten the Subway Cup, because do not Google Sub Cup. I beg of the listeners, do not Google Sub Cup.
It must be an English thing, because nothing in my body wanted to shorten Subway Cup. I never thought to do that. I don't love the name. I also don't love the Women's Cup name because that's a little too close to FA Cup in my opinion. I miss Conti Cup, but here we are. It's the Subway Cup, which really doesn't roll off the tongue.
It does not.
For our US listeners, we all know there's obviously the WSL, and then there are two domestic competitions. There is the FA Cup and there is the Subway Cup. Allie, will you please? Why are you scrunching your nose?
I was laughing.
Did I get that wrong?
No, you got it right technically.
Yeah.
Technically. So
What do you mean technically?
I'm going to take over this because Sarah's too American for this.
No. Oh my God. I'm going to have to defend myself. Give me the other domestic competition that you wanted me to include. I can tell there's more.
Well, not in the WSL, there's not. And not in the champ. This is why I'm like,
okay. I'm sorry. I didn't specify to that degree. I'm so sorry.
Because I'm gonna like plug what I've been doing.
I'm
gonna plug what I've been doing on Patreon. If you go on my Patreon and you will hear me talk to fans of other leagues, you'll realize there are other domestic cups in the United Kingdom.
But, so I was not trying. Let me just to anybody I offended. I was not trying to imply that there were absolutely zero other domestic cups ever in any place in all of England. I promise you that.
So yes, teams in the WSL and the Championship do face in these two domestic thing only. The FA Cup spans the entire women's football pyramid, and you will have heard us talk about the football pyramid in English football. So it will literally start with teams that play grassroots at the very bottom, not even part-time players, like they play for fun. And
think about the local league that you play in. It's
exactly.
Like it's those teams.
Exactly. Yeah. They will start and then they can compete to qualify, and it goes up and up all the way through the pyramid until when the championship teams come in on the second round proper. And you have to call it the second round proper because there's qualify rounds and stuff like that. So it's the second round, and then the WSL teams come in on the third round proper. And we're currently at the quarterfinals of the FA Cup, which we will probably get into next week once the draw has been done.
Once it gets more interesting.
And the draw has been done. So that's the FA Cup. The Subway Cup, formerly known as the Conti Cup, is just WSL and Championship clubs. And they play in a like group setting, so it's divided by location, though that can make it very interesting if there's an uneven number of teams, because suddenly Bristol is considered northern, which makes no sense to anybody if you know the geography of the UK. But it's separated into groups. You have to win your group to then proceed to the quarters, semis, and then final.
Which brings us on to our question and our topic.
And I'm saying this not as a bitter West Ham fan. I'm going to point that right out now.
Are you sure about that?
I'm going to say this now as somebody who's not bitter. I'm not bitter at all.
That was a good little southern accent.
I'm not bitter at all. So the question is, as Sarah said, should Champions League teams be in this competition? Because for those that aren't aware, they don't play in the group stages. Because they're already playing in Champions League group stages, it would be far too congested for them. So they come in at the first knockout stage.
Which people feel is unfair.
I think fans of teams that are not in the top three think it's unfair. And I'm honestly one of them. And it's not just being a bitter West Ham fan. It's because if you look at the difference, so West Ham managed to get to the semi-final by a miracle beating Tottenham. Nobody saw that happening. And then they faced Chelsea. They played 4 matches to get to that semi-final. Chelsea had played 1 match. And I get they were playing in Champions League, so I'm not saying that West Ham had a more congested calendar. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm like, in terms of
within
the
that competition.
The competition, I personally think Champions League is more prestigious. Of course it is. I'm not even putting them in the same league. But I don't think there is a need for the domestic treble if you are going for Champions League.
I kind of agree. I didn't expect to, but I think it would make this competition a lot more fun and a lot more interesting if it was the championship clubs and the WSL clubs who were not competing in the Champions League.
Exactly.
It would be more competitive and it would be more fun. It would make it a lot more interesting in the earlier rounds and in the later rounds.
Exactly. This is my point. Like, this is what I'm saying. I promise you it's not me being a bit of Betty. It's just I feel like because now there are only 3 teams that have ever won what was the Conti Cup and is now the Subway Cup. And that's Arsenal, Chelsea, and Man City. They're the only 3 that have won it. And they've all done it in that route. Like, I don't think a team has won it. Maybe Arsenal, because they had not had Champions League for a long time, have done it by being in the group stages and then progressing.
Well, it's annoying when a team only has to win 2 games and then they're playing for a trophy.
Exactly. So
that's not a huge accomplishment.
It's really not. When you consider, like, other teams have battled it in the group stages and then have managed to get through to the quarters. So, like, this is for my little rant for the day. But, like, guys, hit us up on socials. I'd love to know whether and I would love to hear from fans of Arsenal, Man City and Chelsea whether you want the Subway Cup, because it does give you the opportunity to do the domestic treble, which is FA Cup, League Cup and the league.
But I think it would, I mean, I know the FA Cup is already kind of like the most prized and coveted piece of hardware in all of England. But for it does feel like it would add just like even a little bit more weight to that FA Cup, knowing that this trophy is then not available. Like, I think that there is a little bit for clubs like, for example, Arsenal. If you get knocked out of the Champions League, it's like, okay, well, the FA Cup. And like last year, it was like, okay, well, the FA Cup and the Conti Cup are still viable. Maybe get knocked out of the FA Cup. Okay, well, the Conti Cup is still viable. It adds a little more weight to the FA Cup, knowing that if you get knocked out of Champions League, you only got a shot at one more trophy, WSL excluded. I kind of like it. And maybe we can petition Arnold Clark to sponsor this and get Subway out of here. Get Arnold Clark back in here, baby.
Bring back the founder of women's football.
All right, and finally, we are going to spend a quick moment on the NWSL, which, by the way, the season kicks off in a month. That's right, a month. That is crazy. I'm saying it out loud because I can't really digest it.
I can't digest it. It feels like only a minute ago Orlando won.
It is truly a minute ago, but preseason has begun. Players are back with their teams. There have been a lot of signings, rookies coming out of college. I think BFC, I mean, this is not what we're here to talk about, but I think BFC has won the rookie signing. I'm really excited to see some of their rookies play. But what we're here to really talk about is that, as you said at the top of the show, Allie, there's been a lot of star players moving from the NWSL to Europe. And I think the big question mark in what a lot of kind of talking heads are debating is it time to panic for the NWSL? Should this kind of sound the alarm bells as to just the league and if it's losing some of its competitiveness, not just within the league, but against other leagues? Yes or no, and why? What do you believe, Allie?
That is a very good question. I don't know if it can be a yes or no answer. I don't think there's time to like be scared for the NWSL as a whole that it's going to collapse on itself. I do think it is of concern for the NWSL because you are going to lose and have lost some very big names in the NWSL to European and Canadian clubs. Like, we've seen it. We've seen Quinn go up north to Canada and mention the political climate being their reason for doing it. We've seen Germa come over to the WSL. We've seen nice one come from Gotham over to go play at Arsenal. You know, Emily Fox did it a couple of seasons ago. Like, we've seen it. We're seeing, you know, Haran and Albert play over in France. Dunn's now gone over to France. Like, you are seeing it. So I do think, but I think it can be exciting for the NWSL because you're going to get, instead of names you already know and love, you're going to get a brand new set of names that are going to bring this league alive. Because, like you said, it's the no college draft for the first time. So players can go with pretty much where they want. Teams can bring in who they want. So I think it's going to be great for your new generation of talent, which is going to be then great for your US national team because a lot of your players are aging out. Don't want to be rude, but they are. Like, you've got to...
Aren't we past that? They've already aged out. We're already into the next round.
I'm sorry.
I'm more concerned for you guys now than for us in terms of aging out.
I mean, the fact that Haran still gets on the squad sheet and, like, Sonnet is now
You
veteran.
can't call her old, though.
She's a veteran. It's like when Sonnet, with the fact that Sonnet and Lavelle are now veterans.
But she's not aging out. She's not aging out yet.
She's 31
Okay?
this year. She's
And
31 this year.
Okay, well, this is not what we're supposed to be talking about, but the U.S. women's national team is not aging out. We did age out, and now that's gone, and now we're young again.
But that's my point. Is the fact you are going to bring this talent, and they're going to be able to play in a very competitive league with players of all abilities from similar places. So I think it's a good thing for the NWSL in terms of its competitiveness and its growth that way. Will it lose you, however, things such as investment, promotion, viewership, because they may not, like, you know, you may not see, you know, players they recognise. You know, are you going to see, like, and that could just be but unfortunately that's the casual viewer and stuff like that, but they're going to suddenly go, do you know what do you mean I'm not going to see Dunn this season? What do you mean I'm not going to see Germa, one of, if not the greatest defender in the world right now, is not playing in my league? Am I going to switch over to the WSL instead and get up at the crack of dawn? That's where I think it's going to be damaging to the NWSL, because you may lose that element. But overall, I think it's pretty decent. I think it's going to be great for the development of the game as a whole.
I totally agree with with all of what you said about making room for younger players, and not just younger players. The stars of the NWSL are not players who will play for the U.S. men's national team. They are African nation stars who have come to play in the NWSL, and that's who the stars are right now. It's Chowinga, it's Barbara Banda, it's Ashwala, it's Rachel Kundananji, these are the obviously Sophia Smith, Trinity Rodman, etc. But if I think of the top stars from last season, it was Temwa Chowinga and Barbara Banda, and those were the two stars really of last year. So I agree with what you're saying, and I'll expand it into it makes room for stars from other countries. There's been such an influx. There's always been a huge contingent of Brazilian national team players playing in the NWSL, and there continues to be an influx of them, and it will continue to open up opportunities for players from other nations, and that's really fun, and that's really interesting, and that's really exciting, and it will grow the game. So from that perspective, absolutely. Now, if I'm answering the question, is it time to panic? No, it's not time to panic. I'm questioning if this time is different than other times, though, because there have always been moments where U.S. women's national team stars have left and played in Europe. It happened at the beginning of the pandemic. Morgan went over, Lavelle, Tobin Heath, Kristen Press, Sam Mewis, Abby Dahlkemper. A lot of players went over. Christy Mewis went over eventually. We've always seen that. And it happened well before that. You know, Allie Krieger played in Germany. Crystal Dunn did a stint at Chelsea, so on and so forth. It's always happened. I think my question right now is if this time is different because we have seen so much money now quickly come into the WSL. We've seen salaries increase, and I do want, and with the growth of the game now in Europe and the WSL, it is a little bit different, where it's not that these players are going purely to get an experience in another country, an experience playing a different brand of football. Perhaps they're going on a more permanent basis. And I do wonder, and I do question if this time is different for that reason, for the politics of it all reason. I fear, this is my fear, because in recent years, in terms of if we just look at the Europe to US exchange, and we're not looking at any other parts of the world, let's look at just the Europe to US exchange. What it seems to me is that the top players in the US, Naomi Girma, Katerina Macario, are moving over to Europe. And players who were kind of on their last leg from Europe are moving to the US. And that is the trend in men's football. And it would kill me. It would kill me if that then became the trend in women's football, because that does not develop the game. I love Jen Beattie, but she brought nothing to Bay FC. Okay? And if players start to come here and NWSL teams become happy to accept players at that stage in their career, I kind of fear that I'm seeing that trend, and I don't like necessarily where that's headed. Now, if you take somebody like Jen Beattie, and I guess this is the big distinction. In men's football, somebody would come over on their last leg, and they'd be a star, and they'd play all 90 minutes, and they'd still be the best player on the field. Jen Beattie did not get a lot of minutes. She was not the star. She did not get a lot of time on the field. So I will say, and the fact that I see that there's a difference, there's a distinction. But just when I'm looking at that trend, I'm not liking where it's going. So it makes me a little trepidatious. Do I think that it's time to ring the alarm bells? Do I think it's a downfall of the NWSL? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I don't know where this will go. I'm just calling out that I see that as a new thing, and I'm not in love with it. That's what's in my brain.
I get it.
Do you think there's anything there?
No, I think you're right because I mean, football is quite European centric.
It is to you. I don't feel like it is, but like, okay.
Well, no, but it is. It's a European-centric thing. So, like, we see a lot of...
I think that's a very European-centric view that you hold.
So that's why we see a lot of American/Canadian and North American people come over to us, because what's the big thing that everyone talks about? Champions League. Do you have a Champions League? No. So to hold the Champions League as the pinnacle is a Eurocentric viewpoint. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying it's a fact. So I feel like that, and therefore, and I'm gonna be honest, because having spoken to some players and seen it, the reason you're getting the players on their last legs is because that's their payday. Like, you guys pay an insane amount of money compared to UK, like WSL, European thing. You pay a hell of a lot more money. So if they go...
That's so sad, because the base salary in the NWSL is still so low.
Yeah.
The base salary, I believe, is $49,500, which in the United States is not a livable annual salary.
It's not, but the base salary over here is 20 grand.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm just saying that's sad.
Yeah, no,
that's
it is.
sad.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
It's absolutely terrible. The fact that as somebody who's just an office worker, earns more than people... And obviously there are players that will earn much more, like Naomi Goma is not on 20 grand, nor is thing. But I'm just saying, but the basic... So, do you know what? They've done their time. They've won stuff in Europe. They've gone, do you know what? I'm going to go get my payday. I'm going to go over and get my payday in the States. And that's what it is. Let's be honest.
Yeah, that's fair.
So from one end of the footballing spectrum to the other end, lack of college draft. This is the first full season without a college draft, I believe.
It's the first off season, yeah.
First off season without a college draft. You spoke to a few players about this. So quickly summarize, how have they felt about the lack of draft?
Yeah, I wanted to ask players how they felt about it, because I think we all just kind of like assumed that everybody in the Players Association wanted this. And it was interesting to ask them kind of more in depth, because listen, every player has their own background. Some of them went through the draft. Some of them did not get drafted, and now they play in the NWSL. Some of them went to Europe. Some of them played in the USLW League and semi-pro. There's a lot of different pathways, so everybody's going to have a unique perspective. So I thought it was interesting to really ask them how it's been and if they feel like there are still equal opportunities for college players coming out of college to reach the NWSL. Overwhelmingly, people really like this. And I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. They speak very highly of the player autonomy aspect of it. And just generally speaking, that's kind of the first thing that comes out of anybody's mouth. There was basically like an overwhelming desire for growth, and they were speaking a lot to not only the autonomy, but essentially saying that players are going to be also treated better because teams are going to value them more, because now teams have the onus of courting these players as opposed to vice versa. So there was a lot of positivity coming from that direction. There were a couple players who spoke not negatively about it, but kind of voiced their fears and concerns about the potential downsides moving forward without the college draft. And specifically, I want to say Savannah DeMello said something really interesting, which I'll directly quote because it's right here. She said, quote, "Some people are going to be left behind." I also think it's really interesting because I thought that this type of quote would come from a player that did not get drafted. Savannah DeMello went in the first round of a college draft. She was a first round draft pick. Highly touted player coming out of college, but she sat there and said that she feared that some people were going to be left behind. And Alyssa Melanson, who plays for Bay FC, basically said that she kind of concurred with that, but maybe players can start going to the USL and finding other pathways. And this kind of leads to the question of asking these players, like, did college players get the same opportunities coming out of college that they would have gotten with the college draft? And most players that are in the league right now said, they can't really speak to that. They don't know. I had the opportunity to speak to a couple of players who are going to be rookies who were signed coming out of college. And it's hard because the players who are in the league right now, there's no player that's going to have gone through both. You either went through the draft or you didn't. And so you kind of can't speak to if the opportunities seem similar. But there does seem to be an overwhelming sense that there are some fewer and further between opportunities for players coming out of college. And that is the downside to the lack of the draft. Now, the upside to that is that there seems to be a lot of ways that can be fixed. There can be more tryouts added. There can be more scouts added. There can be more pathways added with academies and creating a pyramid and so on and so forth. Right now, the NWSL doesn't have that. And that's why these downsides are actually like big downsides, because there will be some talent missed in these next few years. And I think the big picture coming out of speaking to these players was that purely the NWSL needs to invest in pathways to getting college players into the NWSL. And that doesn't just mean expanding and getting more teams for them to play on. It means investing in pathways in between college to the NWSL.
No, I completely agree, because if you do not have the pyramid that we have, you do not have the youth teams that we have, then players are going to get missed.
Yeah. Just to close it all up, I think that as we continue to watch the NWSL and this new professional league, the USL Super League, at some point, I really do believe that they will combine and they will form one big league, because what the USL is doing that the NWSL does not have is creating that pyramid. And when you have a player who plays in the NWSL speaking to the other pathways for college players being the USL, it shows you that they are filling in that gap. So it'll be interesting to just watch these two leagues, because I really do think that at the end of the day, they will end up combining. And I think that'll be best for both and for the development of soccer in this country. That's it for us this week here at the Women's Soccer Show. Head to Patreon. We got a lot for you this week. I'm finally going to throw up a part 1 of a chat that Tim and I did where we cover all of the NWSL off-season moves. And it's part 1 because we're really talking all of it. And it was a blast. So part 1 is coming to you this week.
Yep, and then I am chatting with Sean, who is part of the FAW, that is the Football Association for Wales. We talk about how the Welsh game is growing, how excited they are for the fact that the Welsh national team qualified for their first ever tournament by playing in the Euros this summer. It was a fantastic chat, so that will be going up for you this week. Also, the Other 8 is back. We will be talking about the other teams in the WSL, me and Mike. So please check out our Patreon. It is literally the cost of a cup of coffee a month, and it really does help us give you all of this wonderful content.
It is patreon.com/thewoso show. All right, that's it for us here at the Women's Soccer Show. I've been Sarah.
And I've been Allie.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
This podcast was edited by Monkey Hill Media. Visit monkeyhillmedia.com for more information.